Hey guys, you've heard it from me so many times about how awesome the Protégé course is. So I thought it was probably best for you to hear from some of our students.
I went into the Protégé course with a pretty unhealthy amount of insecurity about the music I was writing at the time, struggling to structure tracks, to finish them on a regular basis.
We're going to have a bunch of people basically working in the industry get briefs every week, and then we publish them. I was like, what? That sounds like insane. I've never heard of any other people doing that sort of thing, like actually like mentoring people on like the level of like, no, we're doing it for an entire year. Yeah, that's why I think the Protégé thing is just amazing, because it's targeted. It's, okay, we want this type of music for this type of application. Let's do it. And then, okay, here's where you fell short. Here's where you succeeded. And it's just amazing.
I feel like I've learned so much and improved so much of my production skills. I've gotten better at percussion and better at my capacity to write tracks quicker has improved. And I've gotten better at properly responding to feedback, and I feel like now there is more of a future for me in the library world than there was before I started.
It's definitely a course that I would recommend doing. There are so many courses out there, but this one really hammers home on how to write to brief, how to write quickly, and how to write expertly as well. Honestly, the videos are very user-friendly, they're very engaging, and you get to have breakdowns of some of Richard's most successful tracks, or Elephant Music's most successful tracks, which has been really useful as well. So I thoroughly recommend to dive right in.
Protégé was one of the best investments that I ever made in my career. It did level up my game, and not just in skill, but also in my confidence. It just made me a more professional composer and a better composer.
But the course did exactly what it intended to do, in that it kind of demystified the whole composition process, taught me a bunch of good habits. And I suppose most importantly, and what I'm the most grateful for, is the fact that it actually helped me to really enjoy writing music again.
There you have it, guys. We are opening our doors for applications for the 21-22 masterclass year with Protégé.school. Go to protégé.tiny.us/apply. That's protégé.tiny.us/apply to start your application.
One man with one microphone and one awesome podcast. Welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast.
Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. I've got an exciting one for you today. This is a strange reversal of roles. Today I have a very special guest, Aurélie Webb, a very, very talented composer. She is going to pretty much kind of host the show for me today. She is going to be asking those questions, which I get all the time from various people online or my students, but you guys can't hear the answers enough. And to be honest, I can't hear myself saying the answers enough. I need reminding a lot of these questions. So without further ado, Aurélie, welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. If I'm hosting, I have very big shoes to fill, so no pressure.
Just blabber, and that's pretty much that's what I do. So.
Brilliant. So yes, no, thank you for having me. I confess I know pretty much nothing about trailer music apart from the fact that I know I like it. So yeah, I just have a few questions about, I suppose, the process and the business side of things as well, which is also something, we can't forget in our line of work.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, if it's all right with you, I'll just kick off.
Yeah, fire away. And don't worry, if you know nothing, because like I said, this stuff is so important to be reminded of. And, and actually sometimes not having a clue about something means that your questions are much more perceptive.
I don't know about that, but let's hope.
Yeah.
So my first question, how do you suggest one approaches trailer music, and how should you view different trailer music for different genres?
Okay, I'm going to answer that question with another question.
Mm-hmm.
When you say how is anyone going to approach trailer music, do you mean the process of writing it?
The process, yeah. So you've just received, well, no, sorry. I'm already getting ahead of myself with another question I have, but you have an idea for a piece of trailer music that you want to do, for example, for a thriller, something like that, a dark thriller trailer.
Yep.
You have the brief and the concept. You have your door open. What do you do now?
Have you got a spare 2 hours?
Go for it.
Trailer music is all about impact and character.
Mm-hmm.
At its most fundamental. If you can create impact in a very short space of time and communicate character, and probably to a similar degree, a sense of space and scale, then if you can do all those things, then you're absolutely winning. So that's what you're trying to do with your piece of music. Can I create character, impact, and space? Because our sort of 2-minute 20 cues, which is the length of feature length trailers, are there to communicate the entire narrative of a movie, and usually the entire setting of a movie. And when people think of trailer music, they think of huge, epic stuff. But you've gone thriller, which I like because that's one of my specialties. With regards to thriller, you think about thrillers and you think about space and tension. You can generally write a trailer music cue with the idea that your cue is divided into 3 acts: Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, mirroring the film itself. Introduction of the characters and the world. Act 2, the problem. Act 3, the resolve. Although it's not such a resolve in Act 3 for trailer music, it's more of a raising the stakes, like it would be in a film before the resolve. So with thriller trailers, you can kind of imagine it's all the problem. You are building the problem from the very start. And the best way to approach it, in my humble opinion, would be to find a signature sound. Do you know what signature sounds are?
Well, I can imagine what it would be, but
it sounds like
tell
me. Okay, signature sounds are sounds that give your track like an identity immediately. Some people confuse signature sounds with originality. They don't have to be original, and they don't have to be one of a kind. They just have to give your track a sense of character straight away. I usually use a cello or a violin for a sense of character, or some kind of organic instrument. Or if you don't have any instruments to hand, the easiest way is to find a sound you like and just use the pitch bend.
Yeah, that's a good trick.
Because all of a sudden it becomes human.
Yeah, completely.
Because there is some kind of human element to the sound. And once you have this sense of character through a sound, you're going to use that as kind of like a paragraph within your track. You're going to plop it down 4 bars in, 8 bars in, 16, 24, 32, whatever it is, at any given sequence. And that in itself will give you the trailer's structure. And I'm a big fan of writing the track, sketching it first in full, even if it is just using a single sound or hits, because then you go, I know I'm working within these realms. And you don't start doing the mistake, which I used to make, which is making a huge sounding Act 1, so that whatever you do in Acts 2 and 3 is just always playing catch up.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess you need to always get bigger than that first point, and you don't have anywhere to go if you blow it too soon.
Exactly. And the other mistake a lot of people make when they're doing trailer music is they start too big. There is no reason why you cannot just start with that signature sound, but do not give the signature sound away in all its entirety. It's kind of like that signature sound is peeking behind the curtains. So the kind of sonic metaphor would translate to using a high pass filter or a low pass filter to mask most of the frequency. So if it is like a cello going, you'd put it through a high cut filter, so it would sound more like the sort of muffled version of itself, and then you would gradually open that high pass, high cut, low cut, whatever it is you're using throughout the track. So thriller trailers are probably the closest to score writing in trailers, with a couple of exceptions that I would imagine is the case. So the main aim for a thriller trailer is a constant build of tension. And however you go about that needs to start small and simple and sparse and build. So if you were to approach this rhythmically, you would start with long durations and gradually increase your durations, much like a drop in an EDM track, dung, 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 etc. See, there I go. I've rambled and I forgot what I was saying. I mean, that's it at its most simple. You don't need to have a huge amount going on. The only thing I would say that you do need to have is a sense of scale. And the way that we as trailer composers would do that is through humongous sounding hits. So you could use sample libraries like Damage. I've forgotten all of the sample libraries now. Or the Hans Zimmer's Percussion is excellent as well.
That's a good one.
Yes. But when you're talking about trailer hits, they are full spectrum hits. So it wouldn't just be sort of the low rumble of a tom. It would be a sub as well as the punch of a mid-tom and the crack of a snare and the hiss of a cymbal all happening at the same time.
Wow.
So it's like this.
Okay, yeah.
It's like an explosion happening. So we use those to give a sense of scale and weight. And then everything else in a thriller trailer can be nice and small and claustrophobic, Also think outside the box. Don't go straight for a sample library. Like use your nails, like click your nails together.
Yeah.
For percussion. I saw a composer and she did a video of her tapping on her phone as the percussion in one of her cues. I was
really?
That is amazing.
Very nice, yeah.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, so those things are kind of going to give you a sense of character. If you find a signature sound, if you kind of think outside the box with regards to other sounds and you give it a sense of scale, and that's pretty much how I would go. That's a really kind of diluted answer to that question. I mean, and also it does change a little bit depending on what genre you're working in. So if I was working in anything that was more harmonic based, so for instance, with thrillers, you're often just staying on the root, just staying on a C that bends. Whereas if you're going for a family adventure or epic hybrid or standard orchestral, you're going to be using a much richer harmonic language. And for that, I would sketch the cue out on the piano in its entirety. But nothing more than 4-part harmony.
Okay.
So Act 1 would be some kind of statement of the theme, a very, very simplified version of the theme, perhaps even just the first note of every 4 bars or every 2 bars, whatever theme that is. So it indicates the intervals within the theme and a statement of the bass line. Act 2 would be a fuller version of the harmony with the fuller iteration of the melody. And then I would just bring it probably a ostinato throughout Act 2. Act 3 would be full statement of the melody and everything going like the clappers.
It's a good segue onto my next question then, because you're talking about sample libraries, but also making your own sounds and recording. So what do you usually do? Do you have, do you do hybrid scores where you've got a kind of MIDI foundation and then you record live instruments on top of that? Or is it sort of a different situation for every project?
Unhelpfully for you, it's a different situation with every project.
Okay.
And also depending on the library, some libraries have the budget and the reputation to uphold where they will always record. Audio Machine, a good example, they will always record with a full orchestra. Or at least full strings and brass, you know, where it's just like to have that kind of like, it's a statement to say this is a full orchestral recording. It's a statement, not just of quality, but also of, you know, we invested in this.
Yeah, definitely.
So sometimes it will be a case of recording. It will almost always have MIDI. Even when you record a full orchestra, you will pad it out because people are so used to hearing orchestras that are essentially like 300 pieces.
Yeah.
A 60-piece orchestra sounds feeble in comparison to, you know, because we're all working with samples where there's 25 violinists and we've layered that 4 times. So there's at least 100 violinists going like the clappers. And so sometimes it'll be a case of creating a mock-up, then recording up an overlay. And that could be as simple as the top line on a string with a string player, or a smaller ensemble, or like I said, a full section. I have rarely, if you know, only once done a full section recording with trailer stuff. It's almost always been small ensembles or solo players, which I'm happy with, to be fair, because the samples we use are outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have done sessions outside the trailer music world where we've recorded and the clients turn around and said, well, this doesn't sound big enough. And I said, yeah, that's because the budget you gave us wouldn't have bought a full orchestra.
I've been in the same situation. Yeah.
So it's I mean, it's an interesting world because also depending on what style of trailer music you're writing in, trailer music kind of gets put into this big bucket, which everyone thinks is just epic music. But for instance, I just wrote an album of string quartets. Oh, okay. So string quartet writing with big drums, basically.
Beautiful, yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And that's kind of ties in nicely with the 4-part writing. If you practice 4-part writing, it gives you the versatility to go small ensembles like a string quartet, or even just writing for a piano, because you get some idea of the patterns you're recording and playing with, or a full orchestra. Yes, but most of the time it's almost all in the box. Yeah.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense doing that. And I think that's, you know, practice that pretty much every composer is doing now. And that's why it's so fantastic that we do have these tools of incredible sound libraries to fall back on.
Yeah. The thing is, they are of such high quality. Sometimes I just can't hear the difference. I will say, is that real? Is that live? I can't. It sounds live, and I almost don't want to put my bet on it because I don't want to reveal that I can't tell as a professional musician, which is usually just a nod to how incredibly well it's been produced.
Yeah, no, completely.
I do think it's very important as well to be able to record your own stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't want to lose that skill, and you don't want to lose that element of creativity that is added by recording, you know, because I think it's so easy to use a sound library. They sound so great. They're so nice and simple to use, but you don't want to become lazy.
No. I think the issue there is, as a trailer composer, it's almost expected to use these sounds and samples.
Interesting.
Especially in certain genres. You know, if you're going for the big blockbusters, they're going to want to hear full orchestra, and not just full orchestra. You know, as I said, like ensembles of hundreds of musicians. You know, the brass needs to sound galactic in scale, and the strings need to sound incredibly gritty and aggressive, but also vast. And the only way we as musicians stuck in a single room with a keyboard can achieve that is by the hard work of other people recording those players meticulously and beautifully. So I'm not sure whether I would say it's lazy at all. I think it's part of our arsenal. And I think whatever gets the job done, and that's what is important, whether it is samples or not, because if no one can tell, then what's the difference?
Yeah, very true. Yeah. That's a good way of thinking about it. I suppose taking a step back then, so before you even start with writing, how do you get a job? Is it a situation where you receive a commission for a specific project, or are you more creating a library and then the clients will search through that and license a track for their trailer?
There's two camps. One is custom work, which is, as you say, working to brief with the trailer houses. And the other one is working with a library and producing production music, essentially. I have done both. I don't do custom work anymore just because I found it too stressful. Because also we've got the time zone difference. So I would work all day here till 6, and then people in LA would wake up and say, hey, can we have changes?
Yes.
So then I would work from 6 until 2 in the morning, and then get up again, and they'd have more feedback for the changes. And I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy that process. So like we said earlier in a previous conversation, if it doesn't light you up, then what's the point? So even though there are huge wins to be taken for custom work, I much prefer the more relaxed approach of just working on an album by album or track by track basis, and then the publisher and the library do the work of pitching it.
That's really interesting. So then, if you're working with a library, are they then giving you a brief of, are they saying, we've got a little bit of a hole here, we'd like you to write an album of this? Or is it more driven by you? Are you thinking, what I'd really love to do next is, I don't know, an album of creepy horror trailer music or something like that? Like, who's in charge, I guess?
Yeah, it varies. It depends on the size of the library and how the library runs. A lot of libraries will have a release schedule where they will have already planned out the year's releases, where it might be that you approach them and say, hey, I'm super good at hybrid orchestral. And they say, oh, we've got a hybrid orchestral album coming out in October. Do you want to write for that? Or it would be a case of the library having a rough release, and then you approach them saying, hey, I want to do hybrid orchestral, or in your example, I want to do creepy horror tracks. Here are some of my tracks. They would then say, oh, we actually don't have a horror track release, or we don't want to do that. So that's kind of when you're first sort of working with a library, and then it becomes much more give and take, really, where they will approach composers based on stuff they want, and also composers can then approach them with projects they want to do. I'm in quite a privileged position because I've worked so closely with Vic, Elephant Music, since its inception, that Vic and I will have pretty open conversations about what albums I will be working on, where it's not. Sometimes it will be him saying, oh, we need this, Rich, can you do it? Other times it's me saying, can I do this? So the string quartet album was me saying, Vic, can I just do some string albums? Yeah. And he was like, yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean, I think that's so great to have a relationship with someone where, I mean, I guess it's not feeling comfortable, but just being able to say, like, this is what I really want to do now. Like, do you think there's a market for it? And it's almost, I think it can be really helpful for the creativity to just continue getting the excitement about, your music up, right? And if you're really invested in it, I sort of think the music is always better.
Yes. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Trailer music, well, that's with every piece of every style of music is very trend driven. So if you are approaching a library about something that you would like to work on, if you can show them a placement that's happened in the last 3 to 6 months that sounds like that, then that puts you in good stead, because that's basically saying that someone else has paid money to have music like that on their trailer. It's like social proof. So normally if trailers are releasing, when they're working on their trailer company, when they're working on their release schedule, they're doing their research. They're looking at what trailers have landed, what the music's like, what companies are doing. Also, it will look at the Hollywood release schedule. What movies are coming out next summer? The bigger, more trailer invested libraries will actively say, okay, well, Marvel are releasing this film. Sorry, my mind went completely blank. I couldn't think of any Marvel films. I'm ashamed. Next summer. So they'll say, right, let's get together an album that we're going to pitch to them.
Okay.
So when Star Wars was in production, we were working on Star Wars tracks to pitch as they went into production. So it is a lot of that. There is also the other side of it, which I have been very blessed to have been on this side of it, where an album that you get on is a little bit out of trend, but then suddenly becomes on trend. You are then asked to write more of that based on the work. So I did a series of albums called Throat, which are all dark, thrillery horror stuff. Very organic sound design, essentially. And the first one we did of that, I recorded my cello in a certain way that cello stem got used. So a stem is where they take a single, either a single instrument or usually a collection of sounds, and use just that on the trailer. Still plays as well. It's just a single stem. They said, oh, we love this cello stem. And then off the back of that, Vic said, hey, Rich, should we do a whole album of that?
Yeah.
So I was like, yay, playing badly.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm very blessed because, you get a lot of kudos from other composers because you're landing big films. And it looks cool on your CV. You're like, yeah, done those Marvel films. Yeah, done those horror films. And it looks great. That, we've talked, haven't we, about it, focusing on and being proud of yourself. So it is nice to have these trailers. So I landed 3 trailers last week, or in the last 2 weeks. One was for a video game, which I used to play all the time, which for me, like the nerd in me was like, yay. One was for an Amazon Prime TV show, and I forget the third one. But again, you get them and you go, hey, this is excellent. Well done, me. So it's nice to have that.
I mean, I think because I was getting myself up to speed on your latest placements actually before we spoke, so I knew that I was going to be talking to you about it. And it is, you have so many gems that you've been involved with. And it's very, very cool. And of course, it must be a situation of, you're able to kind of leapfrog using projects. And, if you've done something like the, Marvel, for example, it must get you in, certain circles where people are aware of your music and then maybe put you forward for other similar projects.
Yes, I think often as a composer, it's not necessarily important whether you have achieved something. It's what your library has done that you are working with at the time. The thing you're talking about when you start to get recognized as a composer is when your music from a library continues to land. Because then they go, oh, who did these? Oh, it's the same person. Oh, we should get them involved. Or so like the Throat releases, it's the same editors that use our music, which we're very blessed with because we seem to be landing consistently with the same editors. And maybe it's like a lucky rabbit. Maybe I'm the lucky rabbit's foot on the keyring. I don't know. Or maybe that's arrogant of me to say that, but it's definitely a case of, and it's the same, isn't it? When you start to build up a relationship with someone and yes, I don't actually ever I very rarely talk to the editors, but pretty much never talk to the editors. But obviously I'm doing something in my music that's speaking to them. And that comes back down to that thing that do the music that lights you up, because that will transfer to someone else.
Completely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that you should be proud of as well, that something in your music is really resonating with with this group enough for them to keep saying, well, this is the sound that we want on multiple things. I think that's something that, you know, a lot of composers really aim for, right? To have their music resonate with people, and have people identify continuously with the sound that they're putting out.
Yeah. It's when I was first starting out, I used to go to a lot of the musicians' unions. They would hold like talks and things, and Guy Mitchell-Moore was on the. He runs Music for the Media. Is that what it's called?
I think so.
He runs an online course teaching people all across the board scoring, basically. So I kind of walked up to him and was like, "Hey, Guy, you know, I really respect you. This is awesome. I'm very excited." And he said, "Send me your stuff." And he kind of sent over here's some thoughts, and he pretty much just said to me, "Just focus on your niche.
Yeah.
Just do what you do best. Don't master everything.
Yeah.
You know, don't try and be Hans Zimmer like everyone else is trying to be. Do you?"
Yeah.
And I think that advice still holds true. And I'm often recommending that to my students in the training music school and our students at Protégé, where we're just saying that if you get your niche, that means it's much more likely for you to stand out. You're going to be the 80s hip hop dude. Be the 80s hip hop dude, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I think, you know, with your scoring work, there is a definite niche that your scoring work is falling into. It's this lovely, subtle mixture of strings and organic sounds with quite harsh and stark electronics. And I mean, that in itself has its place in the trailer world. It's just a case of like shifting a couple of elements, because a lot of the things with placement work is if your track it doesn't sit easily or hasn't got the right bill, the right structure, it's less likely to be used unless you're like Queen.
Yeah.
So it's understanding the structures, you know, the act 1, act 2, act 3. Once you've got that going and you've got your niche, you are in a strong position.
I think that's, really valuable advice for anybody in the industry, you know, practicing any kind of music, really. That's definitely, very, very nice to follow that through. So what would you say, do you think there are differences to approaching composing trailer music to the way you might approach scoring a film, for example?
Yes. I haven't done a huge amount of film work, but I have done film work and I have done features. And scoring a feature, again, depending on the director you're working with, is very different to the process, the practical process of trailer stuff. At its core, I think all creation is the same. You're essentially trying to make music that matters. And with trailers, as with scoring, you're trying to communicate mood. With a trailer, it's more of an overarching mood of the film. And sometimes of the trailer campaign, which can be different to the film itself. But in its essence, they are very similar. You're trying to write beautiful music that you love that captures the visuals or captures something about what you're seeing. There, of course, are a million differences because of the things that we do in trailer music and the things that you do in scoring. But I can only speak to my limited scoring experience. So you'll have to fill me in on the scoring side of things. You know, the thing is also trailer writing, you very rarely see the cut. And if you do, you have to sign an NDA and it will be a work in progress, which is similar to scoring.
Interesting, yeah.
If my most recent custom work, when I have done it, it's been it's like, how am I supposed to work to this? It's black screens and blips when there's cuts.
Okay.
And occasional title cards. So it's basically just like nothing for 20 seconds. Boop. Title card. Boop. Yeah. So you go, oh, this is inspiring.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, you always have to use your imagination, but that's really taking it to the next level.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
But that's why it's important to understand the structures, because if you know the structure of trailing music, you can pretty much guarantee that Act 1's going to end there, Act 2's going to end there, and Act 3's going to end there. So it's just a case of like maybe shaving a bar or two here or there. So actually, if you've got the structures in, you're okay.
I think that's a super interesting way to work, actually, and really practicing that skill and ingraining that, almost like muscle memory, you know, just knowing that this is what I need to be doing. This is where it's going to be progressing. It's a very interesting way of working.
I love it because I think there is freedom in limitation.
Yeah,
and
completely.
I think the danger with scoring work sometimes is that you are dealing with essentially 60 minutes of music where you can be so free form that you lose all creative drive. I know Christian Henson talks about creating his templates and sticking to his templates, and I think that's absolutely genius advice. Just being like, these are the 7 instruments I'm using for the entire score as a kind of an equivalent limitation.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to lose your way with it. And I think if you're doing a feature or a series, for example, it's easy to forget where you started. And then when you get to the end of the project, it's almost like you've scored 2 different things because it sounds completely different to the sound you created at the beginning. But interesting that you brought up templates, though. So do you like working with templates? Do you have different templates for different genres, or how do you work with that?
Yes and no. If I'm using if I'm doing big orchestral stuff, I'll load up a template because the time it takes to load up 70 channels. So you'll just load up the template, boom, there's the orchestra, there's all your favorite samples. If it's smaller in scale, or if it's kind of organic sound design recording work, I will often start afresh and use saved presets. So where you can save stems. So if I'm doing, so for instance, the string quartet, I had a preset of solo strings. So I just loaded that up, and that was my session. So it's a mixture of the two, depending on how big you're working. But I think a really good tip is to have not just templates as in whole session templates, but also have batches of instruments saved. So you have your favorite sub drums, you have your favorite low drums, your favorite mid drums, all in a stack, all in a stem. So that if you're starting out with a piano piece and then you suddenly go, you know what, this could do with some big drums. 2 clicks later, you've got 40 drum libraries loaded. Yeah. And that saves so much time. So I think because of that, I use templates a lot less than I used to. But for big orchestral stuff, templates are very, very handy, especially when you've done all the snazzy routing with everything being panned and all that stuff. Yeah, very true. It's nice when you can just open something up and know that you've done the sort of, well, I guess the leg work, and you know that it's going to sound really great as soon as you start writing. Yeah, I think there is also a pressure in that too. Yes, for sure. Because all of a sudden you have to perform, and what you write has to sound great straight away. And I think that's why sometimes I avoid a template and I'll start with a piano and just be like, just noodle on the keys. Oh, there it is. Yeah. And there's the idea. And then it flows. Yeah. Whereas if I start with a string section, I'm thinking, oh, could I make a better, ostinato here? Oh, I probably couldn't. Oh, what should I do? This has been done so many times. And then I've gone down the rabbit hole of self-abuse. Yeah. Haven't we all? Yes, daily. So this is a sort of, I suppose, a
a generic question. You always hear it. I'm sure you've had it 1,000 times, but is there anything that you've learned from your career that you think that younger composers starting out in trailer music should know, or that you yourself wish that you had known when you were starting out?
Oh, that's a toughie.
A big one.
Mostly because of the bit you added at the end. When I think about other composers starting out now, I think about the discussion we had previously about having a niche. But something I've started talking about more and more lately is being nice.
Yeah.
So many composers I now work with have gotten work, not necessarily because they were the most talented composer in the room or the best producer, but because they had great email manner and they were positive. You know, we've talked about this with social media. There's so much negativity around that, you know, just if you can't say anything nice in these music forums, guys, don't say anything at all. You know, we're all striving to do our hardest.
Yeah.
We're striving to produce work we're proud of. So having people who you consider your peers just laying into your writing or your products or whatever it is you're doing, it's just mean. I think actually for composers starting out, you kind of want to think about the business as a group of friends.
Yeah.
And I think the trailer music community is quite small and also very, very close. You know, lots of us know each other and there's a lot of banter, which is nice. And I have to say, in the trailer music world, I have experienced the least amount of abuse, if any,
really,
comparatively to sort of the larger music community.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's like it's a little trailer music family. I don't know, but
no, I think that's lovely to hear.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you remember that you're a person and everybody else are people. Because if you're truly passionate about what you're doing, you're going to pursue it, and you're going to get better because you're pursuing it.
Yeah.
So the thing that's left over there is, well, how are you going to maintain those relationships? And with regard to me, I'm doing the thing I wish someone had told me, which is everything. No, it sounds arrogant. I mean, like, I wanted someone to give me feedback on tracks. I wanted someone to show me how they produce music. I wanted someone to say, hey, look, this is my Logic session, and this is exactly how I wrote it.
Yeah.
Which is what I do. I do it in my courses. In fact, my courses, I show them from start to finish, exactly how I do everything, because that's what I just desperately wanted when I started out. I didn't understand how you get those big drum sounds. Why does no one talk about it? How do you do it? And
definitely,
I'm not one of those people that sits there and figures it out, you know, in a short space of time. It took me years to figure these things out because the problem is I'm very inquisitive. I have a lot of questions about a lot of things. So I found it, a little magpie mind, found it very difficult to focus on anything. So a lot of my experience has been through doing.
Yeah.
So I always wished someone was sort of open about their process so that I could see how it was all worked. And also so that I could see that, oh, it's not all this like impossible mystery that you don't understand.
Yeah.
He's just recorded his cello and twisted it using the same plugins I have. And he's automated this, and I've got that drum library too. And you see, oh, it's not magic. You know, people, I get very frustrated when people talk about art, air quotes, like it's something that you are gifted with. Everybody has innate artistic ability, so it's not something we need to hide from each other. I think sharing is something that's very important. Yeah, I know that wasn't like a practical thing, but
no, I think that's very practical. I mean, I think that's, again, very good for everyone. And I agree. I suppose that's what's quite good about the scene nowadays. There are so many tutorials on YouTube and stuff like that. But the one thing that I always think is lacking is basically assuming that the person watching knows nothing and you just completely start from scratch. The first step in the video or the tutorial is, I'm turning on my computer. That's like the very, very start, because it is like that. And I think it feels very inaccessible sometimes to people, definitely to young people. And it does feel magical and mysterious and like you're never going to understand it. Mm-hmm. Which is why I think it's great that you take on students and you have these courses that really start from scratch. It's very, very valuable.
I think that I completely agree. And I think I know I have had some people come onto the courses being like, whoa, this is going deep quickly. The difficult thing with the reason why I have often avoided it with starting from the very, very beginning is so much of what you're dealing with is DAW specific.
Yeah. So
it then becomes that I'm not necessarily teaching music production, I'm teaching logic. Mm-hmm. I know you, a lot of it is sort of cross-pollination, as it were, but I think that's why I've avoided it, because I'm not a massive tech nerd. I don't really like getting deep into the inner workings of Logic. I just want to know how do I get a sound out of this thing? So I guess maybe that's it. How to make a sound out of Logic. Boom.
As the good first step.
Yeah. Because actually, it's funny you say that, because I many years ago, when I was about 15, I got computer music, and they had a little CD which had a digital audio workstation. I put it onto my computer. I didn't know that you're supposed to have a sound card. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get any sound out of it, and thus ended my digital music for the next 5 years.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
I know. I went back to my I had a 4-track at the time, so I was like,
right, okay, yeah.
But I suppose if only someone there had said, Richard, you need a sound card, dude.
But it's like that, isn't it? There's something that you kind of convince yourself is completely impossible and you'll never understand it. And then somebody just says something so simple and it clicks and you just think, how did I ever not understand it in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think that's all. I think that's, all of my questions.
Aurélie, thank you so much for taking your time to ask me these questions. I hope they were helpful for you, and I hope they were helpful for you guys in the audience. I hope you enjoyed our chat. I know we certainly did. And thank you for taking your time to listen. So thank you again, Aurélie.
Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.